Hello, my name is Nell, and today I'm going to be talking about the suspected ableism of Colleen Ballinger and her character of Miranda Sings. Colleen Ballinger is a YouTuber who has been under fire, and rightly so, for quite a while now. It started off when some ex-fans of hers started talking about the inappropriate relationships that she had with a lot of her fans and a lot of her community. And then more and more people were looking at her content and realizing that it was showcasing and expressing a lot of really awful views and awful opinions. And I know I'm late to the game. This has been going on for months, but it is the gift that keeps on giving. It hasn't gone stale yet. And now it's in my neighborhood. I've come across a lot of ableism and dismissal of chronic illness in a lot of her content, and that's where I want to talk about it. So as much as she's somebody who I never followed, I was never interested in her, now I'm realizing that a lot of her content could have really been spreading misinformation, and I want to get in there and share my voice. But before I get too far into it, hello, my name is Nell. I have things to say about disability, chronic illness, mental health, and occasionally current events. If that sounds like something that interests you, I would love it if you would subscribe to the channel. Come back every second Wednesday when I upload new videos. Let me know what you think of my videos in the comment section, and if you know of somebody who would benefit from or enjoy one of my videos or the whole channel, please feel free to share a link with them. So like I said, Colleen Ballinger is a YouTuber who she has fallen from grace. She has taken a very, very big tumble from the pedestal of pride. She was incredibly popular. She was very popular with children, with a young audience. She had a character called Miranda Sings, who was this sort of silly, fumbling character who thought she was a great singer and performer, and she wasn't very good, and that was kind of the charm of it all. And she would have concerts and tours where she would go and present this character. She had books, she had a lot of videos. And then fans started coming out, sharing that she was in these group chats with them, sharing really detailed personal information, asking them detailed personal information that was incredibly inappropriate. People started looking at her stage shows and realizing some of these jokes were incredibly adult, incredibly inappropriate, and she was just getting away with them. And then more and more people were looking at other things in her content and realizing this is just not okay. And I started seeing a lot of common threads here of ableism and of a dismissal of chronic illness. And that's what I want to talk about. So the character of Miranda Sings is said to be a sort of a teenage girl who thinks she's a really wonderful performer, but she's not really. But there's always been something a little interesting about the character, a little off about the character. She seems to be very young, even though she's meant to be a teenager. And in an article called Miranda Sings Needs to Stop Harming the Disabled Community, which came out in 2017, the author writes, while it has never explicitly been stated whether or not she has a disability, mental or chronic illness, it could be said that her characterization is based off of harmful stereotypes of people from that community. She is portrayed in a way which highlights her disconnect from reality, and much of the humor produced is because of the fact that she is unable to comprehend certain ideas, is slow, or does something in an odd way. This is ableist. And there's evidence to show that earlier on in the lifetime of Miranda Sings, she wasn't portrayed in this way. She might have been a little awkward, she was a little cocky, but she didn't have this thick accent that she ended up having. She didn't have the difficulty pronouncing words that she ends up having. She didn't have the clumsiness that she ends up having. In another article called Colleen Ballinger Should Never Have Been Famous Enough to Cancel in the First Place, the author writes, the problem is that Miranda also exhibits a lot of neurodivergent traits that are being played for comedy. Miranda has a slower processing speed, atypical speech, and poor coordination. She also has a fixation on ritual and routine and is unable to read social cues. These are all diagnostic traits of conditions like autism and dyspraxia. But Ballinger plays Miranda and these traits as a contemptible person deserving of scorn rather than empathy or assistance. So again, the character seems to be a parody of neurodivergent people, of people with cognitive difficulties. There's another article, Is Miranda Sings Ableist, which came out last year. Stacey Dilson, which is a character from Zoe 101, another television show who had a severe lisp, and Miranda Sings are not simply manifestations of a daring comedic genre. Like my experience with Stacey Dilson, millions of children with speech impediments will observe how Miranda Sings is a social outcast who is ridiculed and mocked for her speech disorder, and come to understand that that is how the world views them. While I do not believe that Colleen Ballinger intentionally harms folks with speech disorders, Miranda Sings' characterization perpetuates harmful stereotypes that directly influence how people with speech disorders, primarily children, view themselves and the world around them. I disagree that it's not intentional. I do believe that Colleen Ballinger has an intentionally ableist view when she's portraying her character. I believe that she is making fun. And part of my belief comes from the speculation that Colleen based a lot of the traits of Miranda off her disabled relative, who is deaf and has some kind of paralysis, which affects the way he speaks and affects the way he moves, which, again, like I've already pointed out, is in a lot of the portrayal of Miranda. And this was stated by a former fan and a former tour member of Miranda, Johnny Silvestri. He stated it in a tweet, which I will put up. There is some concern about things stated by this man because it has later come out that he is not telling the truth in a lot of things he says. However, I do believe that the claims he has made about the origins of Miranda Sings and the inspiration of Miranda Sings is accurate because it is clear in the actual evidence of the portrayal of Miranda Sings. That backs up what he says. He's reiterated this view in 2 interviews he's done, one with Swoop, a long-form content creator here on YouTube. In her video, The End of Colleen Ballinger, She Has Always Been This Way, a nightmare downfall.
She has said online to my face that she bases her character traits of Miranda off of her disabled brother, and when he is having his quote-unquote, her words, temper tantrums, she essentially sits back, watches them, gets a kick out of it, takes mental note to create her portrayal of Miranda. I mean, it's just absolutely disturbing.
He also reiterated again in the Do We Know Them podcast. This episode of the podcast has now been taken down because he made some other statements that were inflammatory, harmful, and inaccurate. However, again, I believe his statements about Miranda Sings' inspiration still hold true.
It's like an ableist perspective, even from, Trent's perspective. He clearly has, things of his own that are not acceptable in the slightest, but, he's still a person. It's gotta be really hurtful to hear all of this shit that's been spewed about you, especially hearing now that Colleen bases a lot of Miranda's traits off of him.
Well, has that come out as...
Well, I
I know she has based it off of someone that is not all mentally there,
yeah,
but...
it's Trent. I mean, she said it to my face, so that's a conversation that
She's told...
She's told me that. She still stands that on Tiny Chat. She said it. She says, her words, not mine, that when Trent has tantrums, I like to study them and take mental notes so that I can incorporate them in Miranda's act, her characteristics, the way she talks. If you see a Miranda video where she's upset, visibly angry, and having an episode, she's mocking her own brother.
So there is so much evidence to show that the actual inspiration of Miranda Sings is ableist. It's there to poke fun at somebody who is different. Instead of giving children who are different an example of somebody who is like them, but who can also be fun and cool and admirable and who can do things, it's showing that they're silly. It's showing that somebody who speaks differently, who moves differently, is just somebody to laugh at, is somebody who is embarrassing, is somebody who is strange and weird. It could have been such an amazing opportunity, and she blew it. And another opportunity that could have been amazing, but again, she blew it, was with chronic illness. The attitude towards chronic illness and particularly fibromyalgia is also really negative. She seems to look down on chronic illness and to doubt the sufferers and sees chronic illness as something to mock and to use as the butt of a joke. Colleen created a Netflix show, Haters Back Off, in which her character, Miranda Sings, is just following her life. But Miranda's mum has fibromyalgia. And I put it in quotes because it's clear that it's meant to be a running gag. That the joke is that she doesn't seem to be suffering all that much. She has undiagnosed or self-diagnosed fibromyalgia, and she seems to use it to get out of things, to avoid things. She doesn't seem to be suffering that much, and it almost seems like she's faking her illness. I read a heartbreaking blog post of a person with chronic illness who watched the show and was disgusted by what they saw. They created a person with undiagnosed fibromyalgia who had no symptoms, who had doctors telling her she didn't have it, who was using her false diagnosis to get her own way. At one point, she meets a man who has a sick fetish and who encourages her to act more sick and to get a wheelchair to use. What is this? The writer of the blog points out that having a character with fibromyalgia on such a widely distributed show that was watched by so many people and families could have been such a powerful opportunity. This could have shed light on how we're ignored and dismissed, on how we are viewed as drug seekers, on how difficult it is to get a diagnosis, and instead, it was a complete misuse of the opportunity. It was just there to poke fun. Worse still, it looks like this was based on a fan of Colleen's who lives with chronic illness and who Colleen seemed to doubt. The following is a video of Colleen discussing the inspiration for the character.
Fibromyalgia and a brace come from? Is that from any real life thing?
Yes, it is. So I know people who make up ailments for themselves that aren't real. So fibromyalgia is a real thing, and it's like debilitating for people, and it's like really awful for people who have it. It's really horrible. And
but for Bethany,
Bethany is like desperate to have anyone care about her, and so she's constantly making up these ailments to try to get someone to care about her, and still no one does. And that was kind of her like big flip in the season. Spoiler alert, is that in the end she actually does end up getting something terrifying. Then she needs help, where she spent her life faking these things for attention, and then she finally does get one.
That comes from a real place in your
yes.
writing?
Yeah, in my life. Yeah, not me, but like I do know people who have done that and made up things to which is very insensitive to people who actually struggle with it. I'm not telling you.
And now here's a message sent from one former fan to another, explaining Colleen's feelings behind the scenes. I just genuinely want you to know this is 100%, hand on my heart, things she said to my face on bus tour. I remember it clear as day. We were sitting in front of the hotel waiting for an Uber. She told me she believed you were faking your illness to get closer to her, and she was in the works of writing a movie about a girl who fakes illness to get close to celebrities and then gets exposed as the villain. She was writing a defamatory screenplay about you with her brother Chris. This feels so wrong telling you. I genuinely do not want to hurt you with this information. She is diabolical. I'm so sorry. Can we see any connections there? There's somebody, she's claiming to know somebody who fakes illness for attention. She also is apparently saying that there's a fan who's faking illness to get attention, and now there's a character who is faking illness to get attention. And even in that little clip, she's saying, well, absolutely, it's a terrible diagnosis, and the people who are faking it really take away from the people who are really suffering. Then why are you focusing on a faker? Wouldn't it be more helpful to the real sufferers to focus on a real sufferer? To focus on the people who are really struggling instead of to focus on the faker, instead of to put your energy onto that, instead of to put the spotlight on that? What a waste. What a waste of a spotlight. I don't believe this is accidental. I believe it's there to make fun. I believe that the posturing is performative. I believe that saying, well, yeah, absolutely, it's a difficult illness and people really struggle. I believe that's performative, because if she really cared, she wouldn't have made this character. It's there to make fun.
Actually, you know what? Can you get the heavy items for me? Because my fibromyalgia. I have undiagnosed fibromyalgia. It's such a burden.
Mom, just push a button, please.
Okay.
Are you okay?
Oh, yeah, I'm fine. I mean, I'm not fine. I have undiagnosed fibromyalgia. You know, I say that I'm fine to appear strong.
Wow. That must be really hard on you.
It is. You know, that's what I try to tell anyone that will listen.
I believe Colleen Ballinger has ableist views, and she's using these characters to let them out. And it's so painful because there is a generation of children who watched her and who had their beautiful little minds shaped by her. And I'm worried that they learned to make fun. And with regards to fibromyalgia, I recently uploaded a video that was a full explanation of fibromyalgia, of what it is, of how it affects the body, of the research involved, and of why there has been historically a lot of doubt. And if you have people who are doubting your diagnosis, or if you don't understand how fibromyalgia works, I really encourage you to watch that video because it is a full explanation on it. Partly the reason why I did it was because this stuff was coming out and I realized, shit, people have been watching people like this and getting an entirely wrong view. It's hard enough as it is. Come on, we don't need this. So that's that. That's just really disappointing. It's really disappointing. She needs to be held accountable. There are so many things that she's done wrong, and she has let down so many people. And I just want to clear the air there. All right. That's all for this one. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out my Instagram and my TikTok, and even follow me on Facebook. Links are all in the description. The links for the articles are also in the description if you want to check those out in full. Thank you. I'll see you in the next one.